Israel. Jonathan Ruhe joins us now. His latest column, he's a fellow for the American Strategy at the Jewish Institute for National Security of America. Jonathan, welcome. What's your take so far on day 2 of a ceasefire?
Thank you for having me. Well, so far, I think everything remains up in the air. There's President Trump did everything he could to get a ceasefire. And one of the ways he did that was to leave the tough negotiations to this 2-week period. So I think right now, as expected, we're seeing the Iranians try to claim victory and use this to browbeat the Trump administration into giving up America's objectives when we went to war in the first place, which is to remove a lot of these Iranian threats. So a lot remains to be seen, but right now Iran's doing exactly what I expect them to. And
right now they're evidently a different posture behind the scenes in that they're saying publicly. Is that true to character?
Yes, certainly. They're great at talking out of both sides of their mouth. They're great at using war to negotiate, and they're great at using threats to go back to war as part of their negotiating strategy. So, I expect them to try to dig in their heels as much as possible and test U.S. resolve.
And so far, Trump says we're keeping our military assets there. We're watching everything, and we'll see what happens on Friday, Saturday. But when he says Israel's not part of it, and they say he is a part of it, how does that get resolved?
Well, I think it gets resolved by a tough U.S. negotiating posture. The Iranians are going to try to find weakness wherever they can, and already claiming that that Lebanon was supposed to be part of the ceasefire is exactly true to their playbook. They're going to see if they can get the U.S. to buckle on that, because they want the U.S. and Israel to be at loggerheads with each other rather than a unified front against Iran. Because Iran knows, they saw from the last 5 weeks, when the United States and Israel are on the same page, it imposes a lot of serious costs on the Iranians.
I know. And do you believe that how much damage do you think is done to that government and to that country?
So on a military level, an incredible amount of damage. I wouldn't say complete victory, but this is why it's a ceasefire. This is not a complete end to the war necessarily. Hopefully negotiations can get the bit that was not accomplished during the war. But if you look at it, we saw General Kane lay out a lot of this yesterday. Iran's leadership has been destroyed several times over. They're trying to put new people in place. They're trying to act defiant to compensate for that fact. Their missile capabilities have been seriously degraded. Their nuclear program remains largely entombed or destroyed. So I think Iran's capabilities have taken a major hit. It's their intentions that I think are unchanged. They want to show that they won, and they're willing to keep fighting, even if they've lost a lot of military capability.
And Jonathan, they had the foreign minister and the speaker in their crosshairs to the Israelis, and then it looks like the Pakistanis reached out to the U.S. and said, "Can you not kill these guys? Because they're the only guys we're dealing with." Number one, do you think that story's true? I have no reason not to think it's true. And my problem is, if they're the so-called reasonable extremists, do they really have control if they do cut a deal with what's left of the IRGC?
That's a $1 million question. I've never heard that term before, but reasonable extremists is the best description I've heard of what a lot of people want to call moderates in the Iranian regime. That's an oxymoron. The foreign minister, the speaker of the parliament, they're as hardline as anyone else at this point, and they reflect the fact that it's the IRGC that's really running the show behind the scenes. Even the new supreme leader is IRGC affiliated, if he's indeed still able to make decisions in any sense. So, I think the real question is, if there is a deal or if there's a coherent Iranian negotiating posture, it's going to represent some combination of the various views of a lot of people who are all IRGC affiliated. And so, the fact that I think Iran was able to implement a ceasefire at this point, to agree to one, and then to observe it even after some of the attacks you described at the outset, suggests that functionally the IRGC is in control now.
So in terms of the U.S. and Israel and having different goals, through a translator, here's the Prime Minister of Israel, Cut 8.
As you all know, a temporary ceasefire came into effect tonight, a 2-week one between Iran and the U.S. in coordination with Israel. No, they did not surprise us at the last moment, and I would like to emphasize this is not the end of the campaign. It is merely a preparation on our way to achieve all of our goals.
Wow. Your thought about that, because the Prime Minister does have separate objectives. That's not a secret.
Yeah, and I think that message is one the Iranians need to hear from both the United States and Israel, which is this may be a ceasefire. A ceasefire is an opportunity for Iran to negotiate peacefully for a lot of the objectives the United States and Israel went to war. But ultimately, if Iran wants to do what it usually does in negotiations, try to drag them out, split the United States away from its partners, things like that, then those 2 weeks will be up very quickly and we'll resume. We tried diplomacy, we, the United States and Israel, and it didn't work. So back we go to Operation Epic Fury and Roaring Lion.
So, Jonathan, have you heard about any type of cohesive, coherent, open up the strait military operation that the U.S. would probably have to employ in order to do it? And we're probably going to have to do it ourselves. And when it comes to escorts, initially we'll probably have to do that ourselves too. Do you think that's where this is heading? Because I do. I think that's the best of all options at this point, if given the fact that Iran has made clear that they view the strait as theirs, even though that's illegal under any interpretation of international law. It's going to take the U.S. showing that it can sail through Hormuz at will, that the U.S. Navy still can control the Gulf. Iran does not run it. Iran cannot threaten international shipping. That's ultimately what it's going to take, because as long as there's even a small threat of one more Iranian drone or mine hitting a ship that tries to go through, or otherwise those ships have to pay millions of dollars to get through, the strait will not be reopened in any meaningful sense that's going to help the global economy. So I want you to hear what General Keane, he said this is the deal that we should be offering them. Cut 14.
What we should do right now is issue an ultimatum to them based on the 2 weeks. Iran, you meet our conditions, and we know what those conditions are, and the president wants to make them public once again, make them public. And if you don't meet our conditions in 2 weeks, then we're going to reattack.
Very simple. And that's the statement that should be part of Friday's talks, don't you think?
Yes, you watch the Obama administration, the Biden administration, they never understood that basic equation, that the only way to get Iran to negotiate in earnest is to give them the clear alternative of military action. The United States has shown now that it's willing to carry out those threats. Iran has to factor that in. So that message should be front and center and repeated at every single possible point throughout the negotiations. And if Iran, as I expect, still tries to drag its heels, you actually have to resume and carry out those threats. All
right, Jonathan Ruhe, do you think this is a 1 or 2 day or 3 day series of talks? What do you project?
I hope it would be only that, because my expectation is the Iranians are going to try to either drag these out, which they always do, and basically try to erode this resolve, these threats that we just heard, try to get the United States and Israel to argue with one another, and then go from there. And then potentially, the entire time Iran's going to be making a lot of money, charging tolls through Hormuz. So I worry a 2 week ceasefire becomes 4 or 6 week, and on and so forth. Can't let them do that. All that money is used for no good. Jonathan Ruhe, thanks so much for your perspective. Appreciate it.